Hello and welcome to 10 Minute Tabletop. My name's Devin.
And I'm Darren.
And here are the 3 biggest stories in tabletop in 10 minutes or less so you can get back to playing the game. First up, we're talking about Candela Obscura and its massive success.
Yeah, this was a huge success for Critical Role. Candela Obscura its debut had the highest viewership on Critical Role this past month in May, which was crazy for them.
Almost 30,000 concurrent viewers.
Damn, yeah, and highest new follower count as well.
Which means that's a ton of new people coming to Critical Role, which is another success metric for them. Like, how are we growing our viewership? And they were able to grow it the most this past month by expanding outside of D&D.
Yeah, and if Critical Role can keep up this interest in their show, we'll likely see that result in the sales of their game as well. And it shows the power of Critical Role and their cast is not 100% tied to D&D, and this shows it's in them and their brand as well. And Candela Obscura is a great example of that.
Now, what's also interesting is I dug in and I look at some interesting information on StartPlaying, and it looks like just from the day it was released to this weekend, Candela Obscura has become the 20th most played game on StartPlaying. Which, that's also a huge barometer. There are professional game masters that are also like, ooh, this looks interesting, and there's a huge appetite for people to want to play it. And this is only with quick start rules out. There's not even official rules yet.
Insane. And just reiterating what I said 2 seconds ago, this shows the power of Critical Role. This is crazy.
So if Darrington Press can continue to find this success, continue to hold on to that viewership, continue to drive interest in the games they release, and Critical Role can be the vehicle for that, they're going to be the major player in the tabletop RPG space. We all kind of assume they would, but this is the evidence showing that looks to be the case.
Yeah, and further evidence coming in our second story.
Critical Role has played a sanctioned Zelda Tabletop RPG, which also was a huge success.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Tears of the Kingdom is all anybody can talk about right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's obsessed with it. So a Legend of Zelda RPG game has been introduced, making its debut in a special one-shot episode of Critical Role set in the Kingdom of Hyrule, and during the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom timeline, kind of in concurrent with the game.
Now, it's very, it's kind of like a Powered by the Apocalypse system that they were running. And it used the Triforce virtues as the 3 kind of core player stats. And what was it? But this was it looks like it was sanctioned by Nintendo.
Yeah,
That's all evidence says this is in partnership with Nintendo. Did Nintendo make this?
It was a collaborative effort between Nintendo of America and Critical Role, suggesting that Nintendo approved the system and may have actively played a role in approving the rules of the game, perhaps. Maybe.
Now, there's no announcement hey, this is we have a game coming out. There was no quick start guide that was shared. There's nothing that was put out by Nintendo or Critical Role about how to play this.
Yeah, I mean, the decision to release an official Zelda RPG is ultimately up to Nintendo.
Yeah.
But if they choose not to release it, I think a fan-made recreation of the system will be expected to emerge on, somewhere in the future. Kind of you said, there was a Pokemon game, right?
Yeah. So there's Pokemon Tabletop United, which is a fan-made game. But here's some things that could happen, and this is why I think this is important. One, what if Nintendo's yes, we are making a tabletop RPG. We're entering the tabletop space.
Yeah,
that would be massive. You within 5 years, you'll see a Mario, you'll see a Zelda, you'll see a Pokemon official tabletop RPG, and this is just a way to go deeper with these fandoms.
Yeah, I mean, I feel we talk about this every single week. It's one by one, every major brand with these huge franchises and brand recognition and audience loyalty are coming into the RPG space, and how they do it will be interesting to see. Maybe now, in tandem with Critical Role.
Here's the thing: there's a lot of video games that have a tabletop RPG that attached to them. Dragon Age has its own, but that's put out by Green Ronin, right? That's licensed.
Yeah.
So seeing a licensed game come out is obviously interesting, but seeing it backed by an official, the official company, that's something completely different. Because what we've seen with IP owners, if they don't back the game, it doesn't succeed as well. Looking at Walking Dead, that could have done so much better.
That was surprisingly bad because Walking Dead didn't support it, post about it.
But if you look at Avatar: The Last Airbender, that was licensed by Magpie Games, and that was also backed very heavily by the IP owner.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes this important. Now, here's the other thing. What if Darrington Press this is going to be their first licensed game?
Wow. I mean, that's what I was kind of mentioning earlier. If they do it in tandem with Critical Role, that is just another thing to see their kind of brand itself as an individual creator with their own licensing kind of like take off as a major competitor and like a mainstay. Like, they're here to stay.
So, again, we feel that this is important because IP being backed not by a license but by an actual brand itself is huge. And if Nintendo did enter the tabletop space, that would shake things up a lot. It would be very wild to go to Gen Con and have a Nintendo booth.
Yeah, and having something like Darrington Press have a brand like Zelda under its umbrella would just be huge.
Yeah. That'd be a game changer. But our third story, we're talking about Pathfinder and the Drow.
Yes, so announced at PaizoCon, Drow in the Darklands will be largely replaced with serpent folk, a reptilian race that will serve as villains for published adventures that take place in the underground. And
they're saying that this is essentially, there was a Pathfinder agent that represented like news of the Darklands, and like this is. They're saying that like these are just rumors that had spread out of control and created this huge myth, but they essentially are removing Drow wholesale out of Pathfinder. But things like Deep Gnomes, Dugar, they will no longer be like intrinsically evil. We're no longer gonna have these like monolithic races and people that are like inherently evil. We all know that that's problematic. That is something that's been changing in tabletop a ton.
Yeah, we've been seeing that a lot in recent years with like all kinds of like tabletop RPG games just going away from that like classic fantasy model that has kind of been the standard for a really long time. That is not great. That's basically just like your race represents this and everyone who comes from this race is that, and that's just not
the other problem is this is so tied to like Drow are so intrinsically tied to D&D and the lore around D&D. And look at what Star Wars did, right? Star Wars took everything that was part of the expanded universe when Disney bought it and said, these are all now legends. These are things that you would hear in a tavern or hear at a cantina or, at a spaceport. They could be true. They could be false. That's kind of what they're doing here by saying like these places still exist, but they're now like the reptilian race that lives here. So they're changing some things. Some things are just becoming rumors. But this is really about the separation between Pathfinder and D&D.
Yeah, like an existing Drow characters and homebrew campaigns will continue, like you said, kind of like an older version of Pathfinder 2E. Yeah. But Drow won't be featured in any official adventure pass or.
People are still going to probably have Drow in their Pathfinder games. Yeah. And it's up to every like group on like how they're going to have Drow in their games. But you just won't see those characters represented in like future adventure paths.
And then like the upcoming source book, Rage of the Elements, by the way, will delve into this newer version in way greater detail.
And I think it's Cavern Elves will be the kind of the wholesale replacement for Drow, as far as like the elves that live underground. But as you kind of see, things further move away from D&D and its lore and its system. These are things that are no longer propping up D&D as an IP. Yeah. Tales of Valiant, quick update, almost $900,000 on their Kickstarter. They're doing the same thing, trying to move as much away from 5e, but still having an approachable 5e game system. Yeah. And then with Pathfinder, they're moving away from using shared lore, not only to like not have to worry about the OGL, but also just to move away from the connection and anything kind of props up.
Yeah, like we've reached the time in the genre where it's like, Lord of the Rings will always be like the framework for that. Like first the Odyssey and then like Lord of the Rings, and then you got to branch out and your baby's got to do their own thing and kind of like leave that framework behind.
I think this is very interesting because we're seeing Pathfinder really strike on its own and move away from lore that's tied to it. Same thing with Tales of Valiant. Yeah. And Pathfinder continuing to kind of push into their own. Daggerheart is going to be debuted at Gen Con this year. Yeah. So this is now really the moment where are people going to continue to... Is Wizard of the Coast going to continue to have the chokehold on fantasy high fantasy gaming?
I don't think so. Spread your wings and fly, baby.
There's still the 100-pound gorilla in the room, but I'm interested to see like how Pathfinder continues to find success this next year, along with Darrington Press. Yeah. Those are the big stories we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed the show and you want to support us, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Total Party Chill. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great day.
Bye.